Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Bodhi Buddhism for our second class on our new course on Buddhist psychology. So welcome along, everyone. If you're tuning in here today on Facebook with the live stream here, please drop a comment in the comment section there to let me know that you're with us. And welcome along everyone for today's class. Okay, so just for those of you who may be new to Bodhi Tree or this class in particular, my name's Matt Osborne. I'm based here in Taiwan. I've got a background in Buddhist studies, but also quite a few years that I've spent as a Buddhist monk. Not now, obviously. And Bodhi Tree Buddhism here is just my little way of taking some of the knowledge and experiences that I have about Buddhism, and particularly Chinese Buddhism, and sharing it with anyone who may be interested. Okay, I think we've got a comment there from Hanuman, who's joining us there today. Good to see you. Happy that you can join us. Today, for some reason, on the live stream, I don't have the little eyeball icon that shows how many people are tuning in, so I'm just going to have to base it on people writing comments. And we've got Jay Lee. Okay, good morning. Good to see you joining us as well. Okay, wherever you may be, I hope things are going well for you. Maybe for some of you it's Saturday morning like it is on my time. Maybe for some of you it is much earlier in the morning, or maybe it's still on late Friday night. Okay. Now, just as we did last week, just to kind of begin our class and get into it, we're going to start with the invocation to Shakyamuni Buddha. So I don't know if you remember how that goes. I just give you a little reminder because we only did it for the first time last week. So we'll just join our palms. This is a pretty, I could say kind of traditional, but I think it's kind of traditional ways to start lectures would be far more complex. You would have offerings of incense, somebody would go out and invite the teacher, prostrations would be made to the Buddha statue and so forth. When you got like Dharma talks and stuff in a monastery, there's a full 5 to 10 minutes of ritual to begin the event itself. So what we're going to do is like the ultra simplified version. What we're going to do, okay, we've got somebody else joining us as well. Ayesha Connolly, I hope I've pronounced your name right there. Good morning to you as well. Glad you can join us. So we're going to do the ultra simplified version, which is fairly common nowadays in Taiwan, some other places as well. Very simple. So we just join palms and we're going to recite, we're going to use Chinese for this one. Namo Ben Si Jia Mo Ni Fo. So Namo is, it's the same Namo as a Namaste, the Namah, which is kind of like a salutation. Sometimes people say it means refuge, I take refuge. It doesn't. It's Nama actually, in some ways, is interpreted as like bowing down. So it's like a way of a reverential salutation, like joining palms, bowing down or nodding your head, that kind of thing. Is all part of Namo. So Namo, Ben Si means like original teacher or former teacher. And in this sense, it's referring to the Buddha, who is the founder of Buddhism in our present day and age. And then Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni is the modern pronunciation of, in ancient times, was a phoneticization of Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni. So Shakyamuni Buddha is what we sometimes nowadays called the historical Buddha. So back in 4th or 5th century BC in India. We know that story, okay? And then four is Chinese for Buddha. And again, this is a phoneticization. The modern pronunciation is four. It's shortened for Fotor. In ancient times, that would have been pronounced Buddha. But not for. Okay, so enough of the long explanations. I see we've got Alexander's joining us there. Good to see you back. And GW, good to see you joining us as well. Okay, we've got a few people along. That's great to see. Okay, so let's do this and then we'll get into the class for today. Okay, so we just join palms and we're going to say 3 times. 南无本师释迦牟尼佛，南无本师释迦牟尼佛，南无本师释迦牟尼佛. Okay, so that little invocation respects to the Buddha, the founder of our teachings. And now we can jump on in with our class. Okay, now, where were we? I'm going to flip screens here on the old PowerPoint side. I hope that's coming through clearly. Okay, very short review of what we did last week. Okay, oh, there's an overview of the whole class. Last week we did body and mind and the 5 aggregates, very standard Buddhist system. This week we're going to be talking about the process of sense perception, according to Buddhism. And then next week, afflictive emotions and views, a big one, storehouse consciousness, the meditative mind and the liberated mind. So last week, we talked first of all about ways of thinking about the world, animism, polytheism, monotheism, materialism, psychologism, breaking up the world into atoms, including souls and or spirits, different substances or energies. We talked about the basic Buddhist division, the simplest Buddhist division into body and mind, or rupa, and nama, so in Chinese, Ming and Se. Actually, no, technically speaking, normally in English we'd say body and mind, but actually in the Indian languages it's nama, rupa. It would be like mind and body. Okay, we talked a little bit about those, and then we talked about a slightly more detailed system called the 5 aggregates, which also includes rupa, Se, physical form, the body, this thing here, right? But it's also got 4 other elements which are non-physical, which kind of mental, we could say. Vedana, sho, feelings and sensations. Sanjna, xiang, perceptions, conceptions, and thoughts using words and language. Samskara, xing, which includes kind of volitions, conditionings, and I like to kind of say, in general, emotions. They are moving things, they are active things, like emotions, things that make us move. And then the last of the 5 aggregates is vijnana, shi. Usually translated as consciousness, sometimes awareness. I like to talk about it as cognition, and exactly why I'm gonna talk a little bit about today about why some of the common terms, in particular the term consciousness, I'm not a big fan of, and why I think we can come up with a better term. So last week we talked a little bit about this. Well, not a little bit. Last week, our whole class was almost all on the 5 aggregates, okay? But when we were talking about them, it was largely just kind of, okay, here are the 5, and this is this one, and this is this one, and this is the next one. And we didn't really talk about their relationship, like how, like, are these just like, we take a person, we just chop them up into 5 pieces? How does that work? And it's important to keep in mind that it's not enough to just do an analytical breakdown. We also need to do a synthesis and talk about how they interact and how they work together. We did briefly mention a couple of other Buddhist systems of analysis, such as the 12 entrances, which are kind of 2 sets of 6. So forms are like the visual objects for the eyes, sounds are the auditory objects for the ears, sense for the nose, taste for the tongue, tactiles for the body, and mental, let's just say mental events, mental states for the mind. So we've got 6 of them. The ones on the left there are the sensory objects, and then the next column there are the sense organs. And just remember, yep, in Buddhism we do have a 6th sense, but it's nothing like it's nothing like kind of a mysterious intuitive 6th sense. No, it's just the mind. The mind is a sense that can perceive mental objects just in the same way that our eyes and ears and so forth can perceive sights and sounds. So that's another important system of analysis in Buddhism, the 12 entrances. I know it sounds like, why are they entrances? It's kind of like, this is sort of, I mean, it's not that the objects like enter in through the eye, but they're kind of like, sometimes the sense organs are like considered gates. Gates of, you could say, almost like the communication of information about the world to the mind. And then there's another system, the 18 elements, which is just the 12 plus another 6 forms of cognition or consciousness. So for the eyes, we have visual cognition, we're seeing, right? Just seeing. Auditory cognition, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and you could kind of say thinking for the last one. But of course, in English, when we say thinking, we tend to imply thinking with words and language. But mental cognition here doesn't have to be thinking with words and language. Those words and language, that kind of like, oh look, it's a flying potato, that kind of concept is a samjñā, right? That's our third of our 5 aggregates. But there's also other ways that we mentally cognize that are not using words and language. So like emotions, for example, or different feelings or sensations. So just a brief review there of these systems, the 5 aggregates, the 12 entrances, and a slightly more detailed step up from the 12 entrances, the 18 elements. So this is basically what we covered last week. Okay, how are we there, everyone? I'm just flipping back to the comments page to make sure that just to see if there's any comments coming through. So are you all good on that so far? All pretty simple stuff? Okay, if you think it's simple, it's kind of, it's not too difficult. The basic ideas are not too difficult, but really getting into the details of it and seeing all the nuances, and particularly what we're going to do today, again, talking about how these interact with each other. What's the relationship between form, feeling, perceptions, emotions, and cognitions? That's a bit more complicated. And even if we understand the basics, to then make that kind of like something that we're kind of constantly aware of through day-to-day life, takes quite a bit of work. Okay. So today, PowerPoint's really simple. I've basically only got 2 slides. Well, I've got 3 slides. The first slide just says week 2 process of sense perception. But the next 2 slides, they're just 2 slides, but I think there's enough in there that we can keep us going for today's class. Okay. So really simply, I'm just going to go through a basic Buddhist explanation of how the sensory process works. And through this, we're also going to see the role of each of those 5 aggregates in this process. Okay. So let's begin with the sense organs. So if you've got sense organs, hands up. Okay. Of course, if you can hear me ask you, do you have sense organs? You must have sense organs. You must at least have hearing. Probably you've got more sense organs as well. So we've just talked about those, right? Usually, and in order, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. We have a sense organ and we have its corresponding sensory object. Okay, so eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Corresponding to these are visual sights, sounds, smells, or you can call them smells or aromas or scents, tastes or flavors perhaps, tactile or tangible objects, and then mental objects. And so, they've got to be the corresponding ones. So even though a sound is a sensory object, that only corresponds to the ear. It doesn't correspond to our eyes. So our eyes don't see sounds, and our ears don't taste flavors, for example. Now you might think, hey, but what about like, what's it called? Kinesthesia, I think is the term. No, not kinesthesia. Synesthesia, whereby people, for example, they might associate colors with different sounds, or flavors with different colors, or something like that. It's kind of synesthesia. It's like a crossover between the senses. It's a really interesting phenomena. Let's leave that aside for now, but we can maybe get back to it, though it's not like a hugely critical case. Anyway, so sense organs and sense objects, and they've got to correspond. And it's not enough that they correspond. There also do have to be some other conditions, for example. So, well, let's say some other conditions for the next step. So these two, at least for the first 5 out of 6 senses and objects, so eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, and sights, smells, tastes, and tangibles, these 5 are all material things, right? They are matter, parts of our body. When I touch something, when I hold this cup, for example, right, my hand is touching it. The cup is material. This is a rupa, and my hand as well, right? This is a rupa, occupies space. One of the definitions of rupa. So this is matter. Now, of course, the 6th sense, the mind, and their objects are not matter, but let's just start with the external, what's called the external senses, the material, physical senses first. Okay. So when these two, we have this term like sort of come in contact. Of course, if you're touching something, yeah, it is literally contact. But if it's like your ears are hearing a sound, that's like also considered like contact, or your eye sees something, also considered contact. Then we have something interesting happens. We have cognition, right? Cognition. And this is mental. Okay, so you can see over on the left there, this is the matter. And then over on the right here, we're going to be talking about mind, or the mental events that come with it. Okay, I'm just flipping back to the comment section to see if there's any comments coming through. No comments so far. So I don't know. I'm assuming that means you're all following along. Okay, now, as I was just saying, the object and the sense organ are essential in order to have this cognition. Okay, now remember, cognition was the term I prefer for the 5th aggregate. That's very commonly called consciousness. Okay, very commonly translated as consciousness. And so the object and the condition are, the object and the sense organ are conditions, necessary conditions in order to have cognition. And while you've got to have the sense organ and the sense object, actually you do need some other conditions as well. So for example, if you're going to see something, you also need to have adequate light, right? If there's absolutely no light, you can't see it. So light then is a condition. For sounds, for example, we might say that maybe there needs to be some media for the sound to travel through. Maybe also it's non-obstructed, right? So there are different conditions also for each of these. Often one of the big ones is just simply like distance. Our eyes can't see distant galaxies far, far away. It's just too far away. We don't have that sensitivity. But let's just for now focus on the two. The sense organ and the sense object are the most important conditions in order to have cognition. So the cognition here is, like I was just saying, it's just you're now seeing, for example. You're now hearing. That's what we mean by cognition. Okay, now, so on the left there, the physical matter, that's our first aggregate, right? Rupa, physical body, the physical form. When these come together and we then have this cognition is the 5th aggregate. Okay, the 5th aggregate. What happens next? Okay, and you note I've got at the top like over time. So these do happen like kind of sequentially in the basic Buddhist model. There are some later Buddhist schools that don't have this explained sequentially. They have a kind of a simultaneous model, but let's just leave that for now, shall we? After then having this bare cognition, so seeing, we might then have sensation, right? So sensation, or often translated as feelings. The basic categories of sensation are 3. The sensation is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I sometimes like to, can we just say neutral? Okay, neither nor. Neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So then this is what happens. So when we're seeing some object, we might then have this sensation or this feeling of like, oh, pleasant, looks nice, right? Now when I say it looks nice, I don't mean that thought, that literal thought in those words, it looks nice, that little thought. No, just that feeling of like, it looks nice, so it's pleasant, okay? That thought is not sensation, okay? So sensation isn't something that's like expressed in language or words or concepts. Likewise, cognition isn't either. When I say, you're seeing, I don't mean you're sitting there thinking, I'm seeing, and the thought I am seeing is cognition. No, it's just this very bare act of seeing. So then we have the sensation, and then immediately after that, then we have perception. And the perception, right, this is then our third aggregate, is when the kind of concepts with words and language start to pop up. Okay, so it might be, that's a beautiful painting, or wow, look at that, or oh my lord, that is horrific and grotesque. Any of these things, there's kind of words or language, a concept that we've used to kind of add, it's a bit like a label that we can put on that. That is in perception, and that happens next. Now when I'm talking about next, okay, now I haven't put like units of time on the time scale. I've got these arrows, you can see these arrows, right, from the object and sense organ to the cognition, and then another arrow to sensation, another arrow to perception. And there are this kind of Buddhist term of these units of time. A bit after the Buddhist time, there's this idea of a kind of a minimum unit of time called a kshaña. But let's not go into exactly how long that is. I think, there were definitely these ancient definitions of like it's like something like a 64th of a finger snap or something. Let's just leave that aside. I really don't think that's critical. The point is these are happening step by step, but also not one after another, but also very fast, extremely fast, okay? That's important to keep in mind, because the way in which we perceive it, it almost seems as though it's instantaneous, but it's not. Okay, cognition, sensation, perception. Hey, look, we've already got 4 aggregates here, right? Over here on the left, it's matter. That's the first aggregate. Then cognition's the 5th. Then we're back to the second aggregate, the third aggregate. We're only missing now the 4th aggregate. So after them, the perceptions, we might then have some intention or some volition, some kind of response to this process of cognition. Okay. Now, samskaras, so then this 4th aggregate, samskaras, the root of that, so the prefix is sang, and then you've got kara. So kara comes from kr, which is the same root as karma, right? We all know the term karma. It's already entered into English language dictionaries. And in common like English language usage, we actually use it karma. Often people use the term karma in just like non-technical way in English to refer to the results of something. I remember when I was quite a bit younger, there was a TV show called The Young Ones, this British comedy. One of the characters was this real hippie, and he would always say things like, "Oh, bad karma, dude," or "bad karma, man," meaning something bad would happen to him, the result of something. You'd call that bad karma. Now, karma isn't the result. Karma is the action, it's the cause. And it really just kind of means some kind of volitional or intentional action, some kind of emotional drive. And it's the internal, that mental, emotional, volitional, intentional drive, but also then the subsequent physical or verbal act or deed that might take place. These are all included within karma. But the essential part is the mental driving force, which is exactly what we've got here. So when we talk about those 5 aggregates, that 4th aggregate of intention, originally the basic content, the most important content of that is mental karma, mental volition or action. And then, of course, once we've got mental volitional action, what happens? We then have some actual external action. It could be some physical action or some verbal action. Now you note I've changed the color here. I've changed the color back to this kind of gray because that's the color I'm using then for matter, right? This is a material thing. This is our body. Open the mouth, words come out. Go do things with our body, right? We've been gone through, and this is interesting, I find. We've gone, from this kind of start in the material through into the different mental aggregates, and then back to the body again, back to the physical world again. Now, at this point, just a second, the physical and verbal actions, of course, are changing our body, and of course the body also includes the sense organs. So we kind of then, the physical and verbal actions are then just kind of repositioning and re-altering our sense organs, and they can also, these physical and verbal actions can also interact with and change and move the objects of the world, right? We interact with things. When I want the coffee, I pick up the cup, and now I'm moving the object, right? My hand is the sense organ, and I'm picking up the object, right? At the same time, and I'm manipulating it with respect to not just my hand, but my other sense organs as well. So we kind of get this feedback loop. This is kind of process that's going through again and again. Time-wise, it's very quick. This process from the initial contact between the object and the organ, generating cognition, sensations, perceptions, intentions, which then change our body and our speech, which go back and then change the physical world, including our own bodies within the physical world. And there we are. We're going on this loop. Okay, now, of course, in the diagram, the arrow goes back to the start. Of course, every time we're going through it is slightly different, right? But the kind of general process is the same. Okay, how are we with that? That's the basic model. So far, so good. I'm going to flip back to the page. Do we have any comments from anyone? Any comments coming through? Nothing yet. Is this all making sense so far? Okay. Any questions? Just throw them out there. Now, what we've just been talking about here is, and the terms I've used are just kind of in the abstract. Then I hope you can see how the aggregates, this really is just the aggregates, right? The gray here, the sense organs, physical matter, and our own bodies. That's first aggregate. And then we have the fifth aggregate, second, third, and fourth. And that's basically it. So remember, the 5 aggregate model was, they're not just 5 parts of us. Altogether, it's the whole of us. So in the Buddhist kind of worldview about like who we are, there's nothing outside of the 5 aggregates. This is it. Just these 5 aggregates. And a couple of key points that we'll get into a bit later, but remember, this is all taking place in time. So each of these is changing in time. Each of the 5 aggregates is constantly, you could kind of say changing, but at the same time, it's a bit more than just changing. It's not enough to just say that like, oh, my eye is changing. If I say my eye is changing, kind of implies that like the eye itself is always the eye, but it's just a sort of a different form. But it's not. Or likewise, if we say like, oh, this cognition, this kind of awareness or consciousness is, it's changing, but it's always consciousness. So kind of like consciousness doesn't change, but it just kind of changes its form. Now that is if I can be a bit technical, is not the way the Buddhist view portrays it. Every kind of cycle, right? I said this goes through like cycle, again and again and again, very quickly. Each time it's actually a different cognition and a different sensation and a different perception and a different intention. And even the body itself and the objects themselves are different. They're not the same. Now, I want to particularly point that out when it comes to this idea of cognition. Often, when we use the term consciousness, we kind of have the sense of like, like I'm conscious now, and I'm conscious now, and I'm conscious now. So I've been conscious all this way through. So my consciousness hasn't changed. Consciousness hasn't changed because I've been conscious all this way since as I woke up to the present. I haven't passed out, I haven't blacked out. Now that can give us this impression that then consciousness doesn't change. Consciousness is this kind of eternal, unchanging background. The things that I'm conscious of might change, but consciousness itself doesn't. So it's a bit like a mirror, and this is a common metaphor. Like the mirror doesn't change, but you can put different things in front of the mirror and the image changes, but the mirror itself doesn't change. Now the Buddha says, no, it's not like that. Okay. It's not that there's like a mirror that's unchanging with different things in front of it. This moment, this consciousness or this cognition that I have now is generated by these conditions I have now. And this cognition I have now, just a moment later, is a new cognition that's generated by the conditions this time. And then now, this cognition I have is a new one generated by a new set of conditions. So each time, this cognition it's a new one, it's a different one. It's not just like this kind of unchanging consciousness. It's a new thing because the cognition or the conscious state itself is generated partly by the sense organs and the sense objects. Okay, so I'm a bit of a stickler on that point, but I do think it's a point that people often get kind of caught on. Okay, we've got a comment there. Oh, Liam. Nice to see you there, Liam, all the way from Australia. I'm assuming you're in Australia. I think met you in India just a few months ago. Okay, question from Liam here. What's the difference between the consciousness of the senses and the consciousness as an aggregate? There's no difference. Remember that aggregates, even the term when we say 5 aggregates, each of them is not one thing, it's an aggregate. So all the different physical matter, for example, even if I use a scientific definition, different atoms or molecules or cells of my body, they're all different, like millions, billions of them. When they are aggregated together, that's the aggregate of form. So likewise for consciousness, like right at this moment, I've got my eyes open, I can see, I can also hear, I can't really smell or taste much. I can feel with my body, right? So I've got tactile consciousness and also mental consciousness. So all of these different forms of cognition in my sensory perception process, when I put them all together, that's called the aggregate of consciousness. So when I talk about the aggregate of consciousness, I'm not talking about one thing called consciousness. And that's kind of the very point that I was trying to make before. I think when we use the English term consciousness, in English, when we use this suffix ness, consciousness, and we overuse this in English language Buddhist terms, emptiness. It's always in a singular. Consciousness, to say consciousnesses sounds horrible. We don't. The way this term works in English is it's a singular. It's an abstract noun. It's in the singular. So we think of it as one thing, but it's not. The aggregate of consciousness is all the different types of consciousness that I have. Consciousness that I have now, that I have now, that I have now, that I have now. They're all different ones. If I lump them all together from all of the 6 different senses, that together as a whole is the aggregate of consciousness. Okay. So, there's no difference. They're all referring to these kind of cognitions that come about from sense objects and sense organs. when we talk about them in the sensory way, so if we use the method of the 18 elements, for example, it breaks it down more finely because we see clearly there are 6 different avenues for cognition through the 6 different sense organs. When we talk about the 5 aggregates, we're just putting them all in together, but what's in there is the same thing. Okay, and we've got a comment here from Anders. I thought sensation was one of the 5 omnipresent mental factors that arise with all consciousness. So it would arise concurrently with cognition. Now, what you're giving there, you say, makes me want to study Abhidharma and Pramana again. So the way you've kind of expressed it there, Anders, is already basically coming from a particular Abhidharma school, the Sarvastivada school or the Sautrantika school. Just before I answer you personally, Anders, just for others. So in a few centuries after the Buddha's death, just explain for everyone else, there was a kind of tradition known as the Abhidharma, where one of the key things was to go through and explain systematically, comprehensively, all the teachings that the Buddha himself gave. And particularly when they were talking about the mind and how the mind functions, they came up with some particular kind of principles that they derived from the early teachings, but different Abhidharma schools sometimes disagreed. One of the ones that most of the schools agreed on was that in every time we go through that conscious process that we've just talked about on the little diagram, there'll always be Vedana, so sensation. However, the way you've expressed it there, that it would arise concurrently with cognition, that's a specifically Sarvastivada take, and their model is not sequential. Their model of each, from the senses to cognition to, maybe I should, let me flip back over while I'm talking about all this, shall I? From the senses to cognition to sensation to perception to volition, they don't go one after each other. They occur simultaneously in that particular model. Now, they've got their reasons for this. Last semester I was doing an Abhidharma class, or no, last semester I was doing an Abhidharma class. And they've got their reasons for it. I'm not going to go into this. We can do another whole, just did 18 weeks of 3 hours a week on trying to talk about this sort of thing. But most of the schools didn't have it sequential. There's definitely some big problems with having it sequential, because then you can't say that like the object in the sense that, the perception of the object is a cause for the sensation. Because if you say that your cause and your effect occur simultaneously, that really goes against how most of us understand cause and effect. Cause and effect is sequential, it's diachronic. They had their own explanations. We're going to leave that aside. So the take that you've got there, Anders, is a take from a particular school. And personally, I feel that there are a lot of problems with that particular take, and every other school apart from that Buddhist school also thought there were some big problems with it. And I prefer to talk about it in a sequential manner, because most other schools also do it in that way. Okay, I hope that kind of clarifies. So just comment there from Liam. Okay, I hope that helped. Okay, now we've got to get back. I've still got to give something a bit more concrete. Okay, where are we? Okay, so that's just kind of in the abstract, and I know sometimes the abstract is a bit abstract. So let's go in and look at something a bit more concrete. Now, I might regret my particular example here, but I did it anyway. Okay, let's just do about 4 of these senses. We're going to talk about food, because food's an interesting one. Because food isn't just something that we taste with the tongue. We also see it, smell it, taste it, and we perceive it in a tactile way. And our object is going to be, drum roll please, vegan pizza. Yes. Think of the tastiest vegan pizza you can think of. Yeah, or just whatever pizza you like. This is our object, our material object, that is an object of both our eyes, our nose, our tongue, and our body. Matter. Boom! Somebody drops this, you're sitting there just happily minding your own business, and somebody drops this pizza in front of you. And then, boom! Immediately you're going to have at least 4 types of cognition. Well, okay, when you start to eat it, you're going to have at least 4 types. You're going to have visual cognition. You can see it. You can smell it. You can taste it, and you can touch it. Right? So this kind of, I think it's good for an actual real world example because, multiple senses are being stimulated simultaneously. Again, in many of the Abhidharma schools, they believe that you could only have one of the sense cognitions operating at any given moment. You couldn't simultaneously be seeing and hearing and smelling, for example. Though the Mahasamgika schools thought that you could. And personally, I don't see any reason why you can't be seeing and hearing at the same time. Your attention might be focused more to one or the other, but it seems to me is that they can happen at the same time. So there's a pizza, and you are seeing it and hearing it and smelling it and tasting it. No, you're not hearing it. Maybe it's so hot it's like bubbling on the hot plate in front of you. Now let's just go through each of these. So you see you see it, and maybe then you think it looks good. Maybe you smell it. It smells good. It tastes good. You touch it and it feels good. So I'm just going to assume that. Now, in theory, you've got 4, right? You've got 4 different sensory cognitions. So each of those might have their own different sensation. It's possible that this pizza just looks like a mess, just looks horrific, but you smell it and it's like, oh, it smells so good. For example, or smell and taste so closely intertwined. Maybe you touch it and it like it's too like oily or something, so it doesn't feel good, but it looks good or smells good or tastes good. So each of these visual, so your eyes, olfactory, your nose, gustatory, your tongue, and tactile, so it might be in your hand or like the bite in your mouth, will have their own individual sensations. They might have their own individual perceptions. So you might see it, and what's the first like thought, like verbalized using language thought? It might be pizza. You might see the red, the tomato sauce. You might smell the cheese. Now do note I've got a little star in front of the cheese because vegan cheese on a vegan pizza. Olives, you might just think yummy. You might, I don't know, like Homer Simpson or like pizza and like a bit of drool or something. I don't know. These could be different thoughts that come up in your mind. Right now, these are just kind of one-word thoughts. They might be more sophisticated. You might think, oh my goodness, did they use a gluten-free base? You might think, have they cooked that too long in the oven? These are all thoughts, right? So all of those come into the category of perceptions. That's the third aggregate. And again, these might come from different ones of the sense organs. There might be things that we see, and by seeing it, it creates a particular thought. There might be other ones that we taste that creates a thought. So maybe there's some there's some pesto hidden under the cheese that you can't see. Maybe you can't even smell it, but when you bite into it, then like, pesto, right? That idea, pesto, comes up in your mind. So each of the different senses might lead to different concepts as well. And then, of course, we might then have this volitional reaction to it. You might just think, I want more, for example. Now, it might be nuanced, right? Maybe like because, so let's just like put all the different senses together that, you found the olives particularly tasty and the pesto and the vegan cheese really good, but the base was too thick for you. So, in terms of the tactile cognition of the base, maybe that was unpleasant. So the want more might be, I want another one, but I want a thin crust pizza this time. Right? So it's kind of like this emotional response is kind of integrating all those other ones. In real life examples, it's going to like integrate them, because there might be certain parts where I want another pizza. Let's get another one with extra olives, because the olives were particularly tasty, right? So the olive sensation, very pleasant, and then your concepts about the olives, right, might further strengthen that, and then your volition might be then influenced by that. And what do? You might say, you might say tasty. So over here in the perception is what you're thinking, that's mental. Over here you might say tasty. You might pick up your phone, take a photo, right? Phone eats before you eat, you know how it goes. You might eat the last slice. Maybe it tastes so good, and you're going to share the pizza, and you just eat all the pizza before your friends can have it. Or you might say, hey, send us another pizza, put another one to this table, please, with extra olives, or whatever, right? That when you say that and you have that action, then we're going back to the actions of the body. And as you said, then these then feed back into our own senses and our own experiences. When you take a photo, for example, what are we doing? It's kind of funny, particularly on food. Food is mainly for the tongue and the taste, but then we take photos and we only see it visually. I often wonder that, like cooking shows, like we look at it, that looks delicious. We have no idea. We can only see it, but we have associated what it looks like with what it tastes, that they kind of almost substitute for each other in our minds. But when we're taking a photo that we want to look at later, what are we doing? We're just kind of trying to then keep a visual object. So if we imagine this for the next round, it's like, this is not a vegan pizza, this is a photo of a vegan pizza. Then it's only going to be our eyes that can have that. And then we have a visual perception. We might perceive it as pleasant. We might kind of recollect it. We might then kind of rely on memories, and we're then kind of trying to bring back the memories of the actual pizza, and so on and so forth. And of course, by doing something like ordering another slice, we are getting more vegan pizza in order to start this process again, right? So a real world example, even just the way I've done it here, it's in many ways it's a bit rough. You could say, vegan pizza is the object, but you could even break that down. You could even break down the cheese, the vegan cheese, the olives, the tomato sauce, the whatever, the base. All of these are actually different objects. So, you might then have pleasant tactile cognition of the pizza base, but unpleasant tactile cognition of the cheese. The base was just perfectly soft, a little bit crunchy, but the cheese was too oily. You might have, a particular taste of the tomato sauce, but a different taste then about the mushrooms. So this is actual example. It's really complex. You've got at least 5 of our senses operating on all aspects of this object. Each of these in turn are having different sensations, which can vary in terms of their pleasantness or unpleasantness. Different perceptions coming through. These perceptions, of course, are going to stir up old memories and so forth. We'll talk about that next week. We have different reactions to it, and then we, internally, different like emotional responses, and then these lead to different external behaviors, which can also bring about reorienting ourselves with respect to the object and just reorienting the object itself. Okay. Pretty complicated stuff, huh? In a real world example. Okay. Back to some comments here from Anders. Interesting, thank you. You're welcome. Somewhere around, I've got like a whole bunch of Abhidharma classes with audio recordings that I will maybe get up on YouTube, but they'll just be like audios. And hello, Mario. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you too. Glad you could join us. If you've just started tuning in, the settings for my live streams, I always have it so you can rewind. So if you come a bit late, you don't have to cut in the middle. You can just go back and watch the whole thing from the start. Okay, what's the time? 9:50, everyone. That was basically what I wanted to cover for today in terms of this process. So I hope then you can see how we've got the 5 aggregates. Let's just go back. Let's just go back to the abstract version, this one here. We have our senses, and those include like eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, which are part of our physical body. So the aggregate of material form, physical form. The objects, which are also largely material objects. Some systems include those in the aggregate of form, but I think early on the aggregates refer to the person. So I can't say that this cup is an aggregate of form, but it's still material form. It's just not part of my aggregates of form. When these come together under certain conditions, such as light or distance and so forth, we may then have a cognition of something. And that can be, again, there are different cognitions through the different senses, visual through the eyes, auditory through the ears, and so forth. And then very quickly, like almost immediately after this, we might have different sensations. So these are in general pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we may also then, we will also then have perceptions, which is using kind of words, language, and concepts as kind of labels about that, right? You know, tasty pizza, cup of coffee, gonna cross the road, green light, red light, right? And then, so that's the perceptions, and then we will have first mental intentions or volition. So samskaras, the aggregate of samskaras, the 4th aggregate, which is really kind of, in many ways, it's kind of synonymous with karma, in many ways. And so it's mental karma, this volition or action or intention on things. And of course, with a mental intention, unless we're kind of restraining ourselves, it will very often lead to some kind of physical or verbal action, which are physical and verbal karmas. So this is largely mental karma, and then this is the physical and verbal karma or action. So in Buddhism, usually we break up karma into 3 doors, so body, speech, and mind. Mind is the key one because that's the driving force behind the physical and verbal actions. And with these physical and verbal actions, we may, even if I hear a sound, for example, and I turn my head, by reorienting my sense organs with respect to the object, I'm going to change my cognition. You turn your senses towards something that you like will help to intensify our kind of experience, in particular intensify the sensations that we get from it, right? And likewise if they're unpleasant. And we can not only reorient our senses with regards to objects, and we're doing this all the time. We get up and walk from here to there, right? I get a new array of different objects. We can also just manipulate the objects themselves. You find something pleasant, you'll pick it up and like bring it close to look at it, right? Or if you don't want to see, like, oh, I don't want to see, I don't want to hear, right? Sorry, bad examples. These are examples of blocking the senses, but you might try to cover something up or take it away from me, right? So through the process we come back and then we are reorienting the material world, which is then changing the cognitions and the sensations and perceptions and intentions again, which is the reorienting material world. And we are doing this bam, 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 every hour, minute, second, microsecond, nanosecond of our lives. This is life right here, this process. Now, we do have some more stuff that we're going to, we haven't finished with this. This is basic perception. Next week, we're going to be talking about afflictions. How in this process, then, do we get into trouble? How do we get into trouble? It's a really big question. It's a very important question. And that's what we're going to be covering next week. But for now, enough of this talk. We need to get up and stretch and get ready for our meditation time. Now, I'm going to say something before this. on the like the information about the live stream, go back and like look at the information about the live stream. Whenever we go into the meditation, like the number of viewers just drops drastically, and maybe people are tuning in and they're like, oh, a live stream, and they tune in and they just like see me just sitting there like not doing anything. They're boring. Flick, just keep on scrolling on your phone. Now, I don't know what you do if you, I think that most of you do stick around for the meditation. I don't know, maybe you just like put your phones down or your phone goes to sleep or something. I just find it funny. But I can also understand why. I mean, just seeing me sitting there meditating is pretty boring. So I'll provide a bit of instruction as we go, but just kind of the basic stuff. Okay, so for now, we're going to get up. I'm going to change the camera to the back camera, and we're going to do a few minute stretches, and then we're just going to do our usual setting, okay? Okay, so the essentials. As you know, we're going to start from our ankles. We're going to do ankles, knees, hips, and then back and spine and head. And those are the essential things for like a comfortable sitting session. So first with the right foot, putting our mindful awareness into the foot, the other way, opening up and stretching. Change to the left foot, put your mindful awareness into your left foot. Feel the movements there, back the other way. Okay, into the knees, we're going to squat down, pop, pop, pop. Yeah, that lovely squelchy sound. Okay, that's our bodies. Bodies make funny sounds. They have different sensations and feelings, right? So it's kind of interesting when you think about that. It's like your body is the sense, but then the body can also be the object. It's like you're feeling the sensations in your own body, for example. Okay. Up to the hips. Hands on your hips, and then circles at your hips and waist. This is a particularly important one, of course, because the hips are open and splayed when we're sitting cross-legged. If you are sitting cross-legged, you don't have to for the meditation. Okay. Then we're going to do the spine, and as we're going to do these, we're going to coordinate them with the breath to open, to stretch the spine and the neck, open up the chest, and also just deepen our breathing. Okay, so stretching up. And exhale down. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. This will be the last one. Inhaling up. And relax to the sides. Okay, get your neck to stretch up, pointing your chin up, and then down, up, and down, up, and down. Come back to the middle, left and right, Okay. Yeah, I think that's about enough for now, and time is a bit short. Okay, so I'm going to just flip back to the camera. Get your cushion ready, my friends. I'm going to flip to this camera for the meditation today, actually. Okay. So get comfy. Get comfortable. However you want to sit. If you remember from some of our earlier classes, I think one of the key things for proper sitting is making sure that your knees are no higher than your hips. So if you feel the kind of the hip bones here, if your knees are higher than your hips, so that could be because you're sitting with your feet down and then your knees stick up, or for whatever reason, then your hips will tend to drop back, and then your whole your lower back there is going to like curve out, and you're going to slouch. You can kind of try to sit up. If you try to sit up, you kind of have to tense those lower back muscles. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to get tired. So, if your legs are flexible enough that you can get them down, that's great. Positions, easy posture, one foot in front of the other, or half lotus, or full lotus. By putting the feet up on the thighs, it pulls the feet up, and then the knees tend to go down more. So that helps to drop the knees, which means that your hips are higher. The other way, of course, is to use a cushion or something under your buttocks. You just kind of want to be sitting on the front edge. You want it kind of on the back of your butt, so that, because also on the back of your butt will also roll your hips forward. If your butt is a little bit higher, it will also mean that your hips are a bit higher than your knees. Okay, so that's, I really think, one of the key things for this. Get your pelvis and your hip and your lower back in the right position, and it means that your upper back is far more easily able to be upright, and you can be upright without having to see too many people I'm sitting like a Zen master, but oh man, you get exhausted if you do that. You need to be able to be upright but relaxed. You may need to do stretch work for around your hips, and also be aware of where you're stretching. Stretching for things like running tends to be like at the back of your hamstrings and your calves. They're not the things that you're stretching here. It's the inside, because that opens up, right? It opens up your thigh. Sorry. Oh, my talking is cutting into our meditation time. Once you're there, you can stretch a bit. My lower back likes to make a few crunchy poppy sounds. You can stretch forward as well. Sometimes good, exhale as you go down, and you can stretch over your knees to the sides and kind of rock yourself, sit nice and comfy. If you've got watches, get keys or cell phones and stuff out of your pockets. If you've got jewelry, necklaces, glasses, take them off. I just get mine on because I need to look at the time, or we have no idea how long we're sitting for. Just put those aside. Okay, are you sitting comfy, everyone? You can take a couple of deep, full breaths. If you like, you can use your hands to, like your middle finger, to block the left nostril. Inhale through the right. Block the right with the left, and exhale out through the left. And then inhale through the left. Block, change. Inhale. Block, exhale. Okay. The nostrils, our body goes through natural cycles of, I think it's like a couple of hours through one nostril, and the other one will be closed. Then both of them are open, and then it will flip, and then the other one will be open, and then it will flip and both of them will be open for a short time. Now ideally, if that transition point when both of the nostrils are open is the best, it's clearer for the energies and it's clearer for breathing in general. So this just helps to make that adjustment. Okay, your hand posture, I'm not going to go into all these details. Sit comfortably, don't let them too far forward, it'll slouch your shoulders. Don't have them too high up or that's going to tense up your neck as well. So I do recommend having them in the front. Provides a bit more focus and centering of the mind. Okay, the mind's going to mirror your body. Hands out will make your mind a little bit dissipated, and if you're going to do that, close your hands or palms down. If you're like this, too many people are like, oh, I want to look like I'm on a yoga magazine, and they do some mudra with their hands that they have no idea what they're doing. Like, why? Don't just mimic these things to mimic them. Okay. So if I have my hands out, I tend to have them down because the energies are in the palms. It will keep the energies in, which keeps them focused. If you're radiating out, your energy, your mental energy also gets spread out. Okay, enough talk. So we're just gonna, you can do your own practice, but here I'll just give some basic instructions for breath meditation. Your eyes, you can either close your eyes, or if you want to keep them open, just lower your gaze down like about 45 degrees. You'll probably, I mean, that might be difficult if you're sitting in front of your screen right now, because that's going to be a distraction. Okay, so your eyes closed, or maybe some way so you're not distracted visually. We're just going to mindfully breathe in and mindfully breathe out. And we can also pay particular attention to the quality of the breath. Are we breathing in rough, coarse breath, or fine, calm breath? Are we breathing in short, or are we breathing out long breaths? So just give attention to that at first. Ideally, we want to naturally and without forcing it at all have a nice calm, deep, full, and even, very even breath. That's going to lead to a nice, calm, and even state of mind. Mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out. Mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out. Try to relax your body, but keep upright, particularly relax your face. It's often common to have a lot of little micro tensions around your face, around your eyes and mouth in particular. You can put a little smile on your mouth if you like. That will often help to relax. Mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out. If you get distracted, it's okay. Just bring your attention back to your breath. Mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out, mindfully breathing in short breath, mindfully breathing out short breath, or long breath. Just be aware of the quality and state of the breath. Mindfully breathing in and mindfully breathing out. Be aware in particular if you are experiencing dullness, sleepiness. You might want to bring your attention up to the breath at your nostrils. And you may want to make sure you're sitting up nice and straight. Or if you're experiencing a lot of restlessness and like excitement, you can put your attention down into your lower abdomen. Rise and fall of the abdomen with the breath, and make sure that your body's relaxed. mindfully breathing out. Take a nice, deep, full breath in. Slowly exhale all the way out. Move your awareness from your breath to your whole body. It's going to rock the upper body left and right, stretching at the sides and waist. Roll your shoulders. Stretch your neck a little. Take a breath in. Stretching forward, bending at the waist. Exhale out. Over the left leg, stretching the right side. And then over the right knee, stretching the left side. Back to the middle. Sitting up, inhale. Just going to warm up the palms of the hands. Covering over the eyes. Massage around the eyes. Forehead. Temples and cheeks. The whole face. And then the ears, just rub the ears, top to bottom, particularly down to the earlobes. Give them a good squeeze. Okay. And back of the head and neck. And shoulders, down the arms. The chest. And down the abdomen, and then the lower back. Okay, you can slowly unfold your legs now, and then if you need to massage the legs, the lower leg, you can remember there's that muscle down the front next to the shin there if you need to. Move forward and readjust the camera. I'm just going to pull it up here. There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm just tuning in back to the comment section there. So from Hanuman, are we still online? I certainly think we're online from my side. Don't know what your connection's like there. Yeah, the connection seems to be fine from my side. Oh, maybe not. I'm not sure. I'm going to continue as though we have. So Oh dear. Okay, it's fine from Alexander's side. Okay. So just a couple of minutes left at the end of the session. If you've got any questions, please just throw your questions out there. Otherwise, we'll just kind of get ready for the wrap up there. I think Hanuman, maybe it's on your side. I think other people seem to be connected okay. So I hope you can maybe sort it out. And remember, man, I don't even know if you're hearing me now. Remember, I'll be putting them up on YouTube later, and then you can look at it there. And the YouTube, I don't just do the Facebook one and then download the Facebook video and upload on YouTube. While I'm streaming, I also do direct recording onto my hard drive, and then I use that one that's uploaded. So the reason being just in case there's any connectivity issues or Facebook issues. So I'm feeling quite nice after that short meditation. Pretty short, but it's always good. Now, today we've covered perception, and I think just even sitting and with a little bit of shamatha, a little bit of calming meditation, it can help us to see that process of perception clearer when the mind's a bit calmer. And normally we've got so many different things that are impinging on our senses all the time. It's hard to see any individual thread. It's just too much. When we sit and we're calm, we might have a nice calm state, maybe just like we hear a sound. Yeah, then we can see like, oh, hearing the sound, and then, oh, my response. And particularly when we're meditating, we might actually feel that sensation much stronger. And then we know, oh, now I had a thought about it. Oh, it's a car outside. So often that calming meditation can help us clarify. Okay, see, we've got a comment here from Tina. Are emotions part of sensations? In the way, the terms that I'm using in English, no, they're not. So this is kind of the way I'm using the expressions. I'm using the word sensation for the second aggregate, which is, when something is pleasant or unpleasant, for example. A mosquito lands on you and it's like, ow, right? It's not nice. It doesn't feel good. That's a painful sensation, okay? Emotions, I'm taking as being as our responses to things. So we might then think like, ow, and then we have this like, this intention like you want to swat the mosquito or get it away or something. So that's the kind of the reaction to it. So they're distinct things, but I mean, then you've just put another comment, since the emotions come quickly, they do. And I think this is the biggest difficulty, is that, the way I showed in the little PowerPoint, you've got the senses and the objects and cognition and sensation and perception and emotion. But bam, that happens like so quickly that we are struggling to separate them. And in particular, the sensation and the emotion. Often if something is painful and our reaction of rejecting it or wanting to get rid of it, it's just so like, it seems so absolutely automatic that we think that they're kind of the same thing. But from the way in which the Buddha is describing the mind, they're not. And of course, the way the Buddha is describing it, and any of these systems, these systems of the 12 entrances or 18 elements or 5 aggregates, they were taught, these were not common teachings for just regular devotional Buddhism. They were for people, mainly monastics, that were practicing meditation. And I think we do need to have that meditative practice, calming down and spending more time to examine the processes of our mind to start to appreciate the differences. But once we can see those differences, it's really important, because we can start to see that, one big one is Sensations aren't the problem. Pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, they're not the real problem. The real problem is the emotions. The emotions is where the karma is at. That's where what we call the afflictions are at. We're not seeking to get rid of painful feeling. We're not seeking to get rid of any feelings or sensations, but we're trying to remove our unwholesome, our negative emotional responses. That's what really caused the issue. And that's what we'll be talking about next week. We're going to take a step up from this process and see where this issue of these emotions and afflictions come in, be it emotional afflictions, but also intellectual afflictions that we call view or wrong view. So today's the foundation, and then we're going to build on it from here. Okay, we've got one more question here from Hanuman. I heard a claim that purification of the mind involves decreasing or even eventually removing reactions, emotions, awareness of external objects. I mean, the Buddhist take of purification of mind, yeah, it is. It's not removing all reactions. It's removing negative reactions. There are afflictive emotions that are, really problematic. That's what we're trying to get rid of. But there are also some other things that we could probably classify as emotions. Compassion, for example. Kindness is also emotion. We're not trying to remove that. We're not trying to be lifeless. This is a common misunderstanding. Oh, Buddhists just want to get rid of all emotions. No, we want to get rid of the negative ones, and the wholesome, the good ones, actually we want to strengthen. The stronger we can make positive emotions, the more we're able to get rid of the afflictive ones. But that last comment about decreasing awareness, no, we're not trying to become unaware. We're not trying to become insentient lumps of rock at all. In fact, the more that we remove afflictive emotions, the clearer our awareness will be. It's actually the afflictive emotions that cloud it, because it's like wearing tinted lenses. We don't see things as they are because we're clouded by our emotions. Remove that, we can actually be more aware. We can see things as they are without a lot of emotions and wrong views kind of getting in the way. Okay, from Tina. Okay, thanks. Looking forward to the session next week. Me too. Thank you everyone for joining us. Now before we finish, we've got our little dedication of merit at the end. So if you'd like to join me in putting your hands together, we'll just read through these 3 refuges, and we're going to use that to wrap up today's class. I go to the Buddha for refuge, vowing that all sentient beings shall realize the great path and aspire to the supreme state of mind. I go to the Dharma for refuge, vowing that all sentient beings shall deeply enter the collection of teachings and attain wisdom like the ocean. I go to the Sangha for refuge, vowing that all sentient beings shall unite and lead the community in harmony without any hindrance. Okay everyone, thanks for joining us. Lovely to see you, and we'll be back again next week. In the meantime, take care, be good, stay safe, keep up with your practice, and I shall see you all soon. Okay, bye bye.